library where we normally have a lot of events. We've been overflowing that area. And so events thought it best to move us to an area so that nobody will be left out. So it's a slight inconvenience, but we worked it out. So we would like to thank, I am Professor Delaney. I teach in the African American Studies Department. We're one of the co-sponsors for this event. If you came before, we hosted the mayoral forums a while back, and we host a lot of things here at Chicago State with the goal of having the community come in and be educated about whatever's going on. And so we want to welcome you today. We hope that you are better informed when you leave here. Towards the end, we will have an opportunity for questions. If you picked up one of those index cards off the desk, you can write your question on that, but it'll be towards the end. Thanks a lot. Welcome again. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Dartesia Pitts. I'm the second vice president for the Cook County Bar Association. The Cook County Bar Association is one of the co-hosts for this forum today, and it is also the oldest African American bar association in the country, celebrating 101 years this year. We're hosting this forum today at this institution because we want to educate the community about this high-profile election and to provide you, the community, access to the candidates vying for this very important seat. This is a two-step process. The first process, or the first step, of course, is to register and vote. You have to register to vote. You have up until March the 14th. I'm sorry. Sorry, February the 17th, which is next Wednesday, to register to vote. Or February 16th, I am so sorry, I'm looking at my notes. But early voting begins next Wednesday, February 17th. And of course, we all know that Election Tuesday is March 15th. I have the honor, before I do that, there are several co-hosts for this event. We have the Cook County Bar Association, as you know. We have the CSU African American Studies Program, CSU Department of Criminal Justice, Philosophy and Political Science, CSU Pre-Law Association, the Coalition of African American Leaders, the New Black Leadership Coalition, Chicago Council of Black Studies, and the National Conference of Black Lawyers. I have the honor today to introduce as well our esteemed moderator, Ms. Star Jones. Star Jones is president of Professional Diversity Network, a publicly traded company, and president of the National Association of Professional Women. As such, Ms. Jones leads a nationwide team dedicated to supporting and advocating for PDN's over 10 million member network of diverse job seekers, alongside with providing expanded networking and career opportunities for the more than 850,000 diverse professional women members in the over 200 local chapters and 10,000 plus virtual e-chapters members of NAPW. Publicly traded. She's a former senior assistant district attorney for the city of New York. Ms. Jones began her professional career specializing in victim and family advocacy as a homicide and major crime prosecutor. Expanding her reach, Ms. Jones worked in television for over 25 years and is best known to television viewers for her candor, confidence, and uncanny ability to clarify muddy legal and social issues, offering a fresh perspective to the day's most talked about crime and justice, political and sociological issues from the worlds of news, entertainment, politics, and pop culture. Ms. Jones was a legal correspondent, commentator, and analyst for over 2 decades. From 1997 to 2006, she was co-host of ABC's hit daytime show, The View. For her work in television, Ms. Jones has received 9 Emmy nominations. Ms. Jones is also heavily involved in numerous philanthropic efforts. Since 2011, Ms. Jones has been the face of the American Heart Association's national Go Red efforts as a national volunteer. Ms. Jones continues to be seen in various media appearances as a diversity and inclusion and women's health and empowerment advocate and legal and media analyst. Welcome, Ms. Star Jones.
Thank you so very much for a very kind introduction, and thank you for not making it any longer or more boring than it actually was. I very much appreciate the opportunity to greet you here for the Cook County Bar Association's Candidates Forum for the Office of the State's Attorney. When this afternoon was introduced, we were told that this was a very watched race this year and that it was one of the most important seats that you would be casting your vote for. As a former senior assistant district attorney in New York, I can tell you the chief prosecutor is the race that you should always be focused on. Particularly the minority community, the impact on justice and or injustice in our community is felt 3- and 4-fold. And so focusing on the state's attorney's office when it's in the news may be easy, but you need to focus on it all the time. And this is a particularly interesting race because so many issues are being brought up. It is my understanding that the Cook County Bar Association, which again is the nation's oldest African American Bar Association, invited all of the candidates to participate. 2 candidates elected to come and address this community forum. From what I understand, candidate Anita Alveraz was, quote, unavailable, and we still are not clear on whether or not candidate Christopher Plannkuche is going to be joining us, but we have seats for both of them should they decide to show up, or should somebody decide to put on social media or text, you have an empty chair. So let me introduce you to the people who are here today. In alphabetical order, candidates for the Democrat for Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Kim Foxx. Let's give her a round of applause. Ms. Foxx is an accomplished leader, a veteran prosecutor, and an advocate for children and families in Cook County. She is running to become Cook County State's Attorney to continue that work and to restore public faith in a criminal justice system that has failed so many families. She became a guardian ad litem with the Cook County Public Guardian's Office, managing a caseload of more than 150 children navigating the justice system, many of whom had been abused, neglected, or had special needs. Kim then became an assistant state's attorney for Cook County, where she served for 12 years. Kim rose through the ranks, supervising dozens of assistant state's attorneys in felony juvenile courtrooms. Most recently, Kim served as chief of staff for Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, as advisor and lead strategist to the president of the nation's second largest county. Kim oversaw a $4 billion annual budget, that's B, billion, and counseled President Preckwinkle on issues ranging from finances to public safety and juvenile detention. In the Preckwinkle administration, Kim was the lead architect of the criminal justice reform agenda, addressing racial disparities in the criminal and juvenile justice systems. Those efforts resulted in a significant drop in the Cook County jail population while maintaining public safety. Welcome, Kim, to today's forum. Thank you. Our next candidate for Democrat for Cook County State's Attorney is Attorney Donna Moore. Let's welcome Donna. Donna Moore is a former federal prosecutor with an exemplary felony jury trial record in white-collar crime and public corruption cases. She is also a former felony trial division prosecutor in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, where she tried hundreds of bench trials and numerous jury trials. She is on the ballot in the March 15 Democratic primary election, running to replace incumbent Anita Alveraz as the county's chief prosecutor. Her campaign platform revolves around 3 critical issues for the Cook County justice system: reforming the state's attorney's office so that it can be trusted to do the right thing, reducing gun violence so people will feel safer, and rooting out public corruption. She is the only candidate in the race that has shared her reform and gun policy plans with voters. A first-time candidate for elective office, she is also the only independent candidate in the race who can be tough on crime no matter who commits it. Ms. Moore is a graduate of Tufts University in Boston and holds a master's degree in political science from Northwestern University in Evanston. She taught trial advocacy as an adjunct professor at Kent Law School. Again, let's welcome Donna Moore. And actually, you both touched on something that I don't want you to touch anything. You know I've got bronchitis. You'll get the heebie-jeebies, okay? Thank you so much. You both touched on in your bios, by the way, that was from the candidate's bio, but it was very clear that you all have your own sense of what justice is. When I became a public prosecutor some 25, almost 30 years ago now, I thought that the job was to see that justice was done. Donna, what do you see as the primary responsibility of the state's office?
I think when we say to see justice is done, what that means is that we have to empower our prosecutors to do the right thing. And doing the right thing doesn't always mean charging somebody or convicting somebody. It means that we as prosecutors have to analyze the situation and see what justice is about in each particular case. The most important thing we have to do as prosecutors is to be fair, consistent, and transparent in what we do, which is something we haven't had for the past 7 years. All of us here in Cook County know that. And the other thing we need to do, and it sounds easy, but it's not, is we have to prosecute crime no matter who commits it. It doesn't matter the color, white, black, navy, blue. If somebody commits a crime, we have to have the courage to follow the evidence no matter where it leads.
Thank you, Donna. And Kim?
Certainly. I agree that justice means doing the right thing for the right reasons all the time. What's happened with our criminal justice system is that when we talk about justice and we talk about the disproportionate impact, particularly on communities of color, it's when we have those questions of, is justice fair and equitable? We absolutely must prosecute crime no matter who does it. I think what we've seen in Cook County, not just in the last 7 years, but for several decades, is the disproportionality on communities of color, largely because it's not just that we prosecute crime wherever it is, we over-prosecute crimes in certain areas for certain offenses that have a disproportionate impact. And so when we talk about justice, particularly as it relates to communities of color, what we have to say is, just because I can charge it, should I? And what are the long-term effects of having done so? And when you look at justice, it's not just in that moment, it's the long-term effects of the decisions that we make with our criminal justice system.
Ladies, I'm curious. Obviously, I've been following the race. Most of the people in this room have been following the race and the issues. Criminal justice reform is clearly at the top of everyone's list, but there are some additional justice issues facing Cook County. Kim, what do you see as the most significant justice issue facing Cook County outside of just criminal justice reform?
Certainly, the justice in Cook County, the credibility of the criminal justice system has been tarnished. Really, it's been broken. And we've talked a lot about police misconduct, but we fail to talk about police misconduct as it relates to accountability and the role of the prosecutor's office to hold people who commit misconduct accountable. And I think what we've seen in the wake of Laquan McDonald and these other cases have been a prosecutor who refused to do her job for 400 days until her hand was forced, and what that does to the community who we have to be in relationship with in order to have a criminal justice system that people can have faith and trust in. Our criminal justice system is not just the stakeholders, it's in relationship with community. When you've breached that relationship with the community by not being open, by not being transparent, then trying to rebuild that and work in partnership to deal with the issues of crime and violence, you can't do it. So dealing with police misconduct, dealing with the issues not just in light of what's happened in the last 6 months, but really digging down. I mean, this Cook County, we have to remind people, is the home of the first police torture reparations fund in the country, but we've not prosecuted anybody for police torture. So what happens when Laquan McDonald happens is that it's not the first, it's a tip. And that if we only keep gnawing at the tips of things, we're never gonna get down to the root of things, and we haven't done that. So criminal justice reform means dealing with the issues around disproportionate minority contact and prosecutions, but also the heavy and hard work of dealing with police accountability so that we can restore the trust of the community.
Kim says trust is high. Restoring trust is high on her list. You alluded to full transparency being high on your list. Expand upon what you see as a significant issue facing Cook County's justice system.
Well, the problem is that people don't trust the office to do the right thing. And in part, it is because there's no trust. And there's no trust because there's no transparency. You know, we're the only office in the country, the only state's attorney's office that apparently doesn't keep track of cases we charge, how many cases we charge, what the disposition is of cases we charge. And I say that because we have two agencies, the Better Government Association and the Chicago Justice Project, that both have sued the office because Ms. Alveraz won't release information. She doesn't release substantive information about her office. She also doesn't release information about hiring and promotion and how many first chairs are minorities. So as a public, we are left really in the dark to know what's going on, and that in turn breeds a distrust. But in terms of, in addition to not knowing what's going on, what we don't see is, again, prosecuting crimes no matter who commits it. We have seen not only very, very few police prosecutions coming out of her office, and you know, one of the things that I believe is we have to get IPRA out of the way of the state's attorney's office. IPRA is the independent police agency, or independent police review authority, and the problem with IPRA is this. You know, Anita Alveraz has rested on the fact that IPRA is investigating a case. And you know, IPRA is not a legal creation. It is a creation by agreement of the mayor and the police. And IPRA's job is to protect the police. The state's attorney's job is to protect the public. And so when you have a fatal police shooting, in my mind, that is a criminal case unless and until the state's attorney says it's not a criminal case. And for IPRA, even under their quote-unquote new management, who, by the way, the head of IPRA now, ex-husband, I guess, manages the money, the funds for the city of Chicago, so I don't know how much it is, but my time is up. But IPRA is an impediment to prosecution of police and fatal shootings. And if I don't get agreement to change that, I will go down to Springfield and change that because it is an impediment to justice in our county.
Ladies, I'm going to remind you that we're getting cues right here on the front table, and so we're going to ask that we try to stay on time. Donna, you actually brought this up, and it was really my next question. It's my understanding that there are either no black first chairs or maybe 1 or 2 out in the suburbs somewhere in the prosecutor's office, in the felony trial division. I can tell you that I was senior assistant district attorney by the time I was 30. And it wasn't in some small county, it was Kings County in Brooklyn. And we have plenty criminals in Brooklyn, okay? I bring that up because being senior assistant district attorney puts you at the table where decisions are made. And without minority representation at that table, when decisions are being made, you're going to make decisions that don't take into account the entire community. One of the senior lawyers in Ms. Alvarez's office, Dan Gallagher, the chief of the office's civil division, was actually forced to resign last fall due to what most thought were racist, sexist, and inappropriate comments on social media about African Americans and women. So, why don't we have more minorities? And what will you specifically do to increase the presence of minorities in positions with decision-making authority within the office? And I'll start with you, Karen.
I worked in the state's attorney's office for 12 years, and I was one of the fortunate few to be able to rise to a management position. And I rose to a management position without having gone to 26 in California, which is a rarity. One of the issues is that it takes almost 8 years before an assistant comes into the door as a new hire before they're able to go to be a third chair at 26 in California. That's significant because, one, people who go into the state's attorney's office realize that you're not going there to make a lot of money. It's a public service job. You're going there to represent communities and victims and be an advocate, and you've got mounting student loan debt to deal with. So we hire a lot of people in the state's attorney's office. There's a lot of diversity on entry-level positions. The problem becomes maintaining, retaining employers, and promotions. When you work in an office that historically does not promote people of color, right now there is one Latino in a position of leadership at the state's attorney's office outside of Anita Alveraz. In terms of supervisors in the state's attorney's office, there are, I think, 7 African American supervisors in the state's attorney's office out of an office of 850. And those supervisors are in juvenile, they're in child support, they're not at 26th Street. That's real. And so there's a lot of conversation about, where the merit is and where people go. The fact of the matter is that it's been a historical problem in the state's attorney's office with promoting African American and Latinos to positions of leadership. And it starts at the first chair level. There has been, in the last 7 years, 1 African American first chair at 26th Street. 1. And it's the same guy who was there when I left. And then he went to gangs. And it's because we don't push on accountability as it comes to race. And I will say unequivocally, it's not that they are not talented, it's not that they don't work as hard, it's that they are not given the opportunity. And no one is holding the state's attorney accountable as it comes to diversity within her office. So I have said repeatedly that when elected, I will hire a chief diversity officer in the executive administration that will put diversity at the first and forefront of hiring, not just at lower level positions, but to make sure in senior leadership positions, not just in the courtrooms, but on the executive level, is reflective of the communities that we serve. Because I will tell you, it is incredibly difficult to be one of a few in an office that prosecutes many who look like you and not have the support or the mentoring or the guidance or a pathway to leadership. As I said, I was fortunate enough to become a leader within the state's attorney's office, but I was also incredibly discouraged that having been gone 3 years, the numbers have not changed at all. And in fact, we continue to see a lack of diversity in the very courtrooms where we need it the most.
Donna, you alluded to this in your opening statement that lack of diversity in decision-making roles is a huge problem. Clearly, when the decision is made to charge and what to charge, that comes with the authority of the first chair and the supervisors. Specifically, what will you do to improve? I mean, I don't even want to say improve, because when you start at less than 0, everything you do is going up. But what will you do to give parity to the issue of minorities in leadership positions in the state's attorney's office?
Well, first, I just want to comment on something you said earlier, which is that Mr. Gallagher, Dan Gallagher, was the head in the civil division Ms. Alveraz ran her first campaign out of his private law office and brought him in, actually fired someone who was beloved in the office to bring this fellow in. And the thing that I was really amazed at, quite frankly, and I think Kim will agree with me, is he was posting comments on Facebook, of which he and Anita are Facebook friends, some of them during work hours, and not only just racial comments and comments against women, but also comments against the president and the first lady. And he was allowed to resign. She didn't fire him. He was allowed to resign, and that has a lot of implications, of course, for whenever you fill out another employment application, do you have to put down you're fired, number one, and also has implications for his pension. So I have to tell you, I was amazed that was not even a one-day news story. It was on the 9 o'clock news, and then we didn't hear about it again. So that's just my comment to what happened there. The charging takes place really at felony review. And you know, felony review is a part of the office that assistants always complain about, because you're on for 12 hours, then you're off for 12 hours, and you do it 3 days in a row, and then you're off again. And you're
24 hours.
Okay. Well, you get a little sleep deprived. But the problem in felony review is that's where the initial charging takes place. And that's also where you can say, you know what, I'm not going to charge this case. And what we have been seeing, in particular in the last 7 years, is that there are good cases that are not being charged, and there are cases that really shouldn't be charged as felonies that are being charged. In part because the assistants don't have discretion, and in part because the philosophy of the office, this goes back to what we first talked about initially, in part because the office is all about convictions and racking up convictions, and it's not about doing justice. And so we really have to focus our charging issues in felony review and train the assistants what to do, what not to do. A quick example is gun violence. We know it's a problem. About a month ago, there was a case that came in, 3 gang members, they were shooting, and came into felony review, and felony review said, well, I don't know which one shot the gun, so I'm not charging any of them. You know, that's why most of our gun offenders are back out on the street in 24, 48 hours. So we really have to focus on training the folks in that department.
I see training and making sure the diversity and inclusion is part of the front burner for the next state's attorney. I was reading some Chicago news and learned that U.S. District Judge Edmund Chang recently said that a city attorney, Jordan Marsh, who resigned, by the way, quote, intentionally concealed evidence. The judge also criticized a second city lawyer, Thomas Almond, for failing to make a reasonable effort to find what would turn out to be a crucial piece of evidence. Just so you all know, the law department is where attorneys map strategies for dealing with lawsuits against the police department. Donna, in light of the recent scandals that have rocked the city of Chicago's law department, what safeguards would you put in place to make sure the office's civil division doesn't suffer a similar fate? And I'm looking for specifics.
Well, the case that you mentioned involved a shooting fatality back in 2011, the Darius Pinex case, and I'm very pleased to say that Gloria Pinex's mom has endorsed me, and I've spent a lot of time with her over the past 8 or 9 months. So the office in that case was the Corp Consul's office. Just, you know, I put a lot of junk on the state's attorney, but I'll give her a break on that one. But what we have to do for our civil division and for our criminal division, because this goes into how you try a case. And withholding evidence is about the worst thing you can do as a lawyer. But this goes back to leadership from the top. If you don't instill in your assistants that they have to do the right thing, look, we can win a case. And we can win a case doing it the right way. I don't have to have assistants doctor witness statements like the Latanzio case. I don't have to have my state's attorneys lie that they went and took a witness statement like what just happened in Princeton-Williamson. They will do it the right way or we won't do it, because that's what we're charged. That's our ethical duty as state's attorneys and as lawyers. And I hate to say it, but it involves more training. It involves getting everybody in a room and saying, this is how we're going to do it starting from day one. And the disciplinary action isn't going to come when assistants do the right thing, because that's what's happening right now. It's going to come when they do the wrong thing, like not giving over Brady material, exculpatory evidence, when otherwise your case is going to get thrown out. And then what do we do? Where are we now? We're worse off than had the civil lawyers turned over the evidence, and that's inexcusable.
Kim?
I agree that it's a leadership issue from the top and that we have to have training, but we need separate safeguards as well. The State's Attorney's Office, with the power that it holds, does not hold itself out for Inspector General oversight, and that is a problem. That it is an issue where if someone is committing a bad act, if we find out, for example, with the young man who doctored a felony review statement and his partner knew about it, and his partner doesn't have someone to report it to, or they report it to a supervisor and nothing happens, then it may as well be that nothing happens. If you do not have outside ethical oversight of the attorneys within your office, if you do not have a structure in place in which people can report wrongdoing by state's attorneys, both in the criminal and civil division, and you are relying wholly upon the people within that office to police themselves, you get what you get. And so I am advocating for Inspector General oversight of the State's Attorney's Office and an ethics officer, such that attorneys within the office, or not even attorneys, investigators or employees who know of wrongdoing by attorneys within that office have a place to go and report those wrongdoings so that they can be investigated and rooted out before we find out when it's too late. In the Latanzio case, it came out in court. The people who knew that he had done that had known he had done that for months. In the case that we talked about with Marsh, it came out in court. The fact is that these are not isolated incidents. We do not have mechanisms in place to make sure that when these incidents occur, that there's a way to not discipline after the fact, but root out corrupt or attorneys who do misconduct as it goes along. And for an office that has this much power and this much control over our criminal justice system to be devoid of transparency and accountability and ethical oversight, I think is an injustice.
You know, ladies, part of my job at Professional Diversity Network is to go in and talk to CEOs every single day about their diversity and inclusion strategies, both internally and externally. Diversity and inclusion is not something that you do because it makes you feel good. It's something that you do because in my work, it's good for business. It makes for more creativity, more collaboration. In your work, it makes for more people at the table so that mistakes are not made, or at least they are diminished.